All right, well, my pleasure to lead this, and then very soon you will see, um, who our nominees are, if you don't already know, but I think it was in the announcement. But first, I'll just welcome you to the Clackamas Woodland Farmer of the Year recognition and the storytelling tonight, and my pleasure to lead that. I want to review what the Woodland Farmer of the Year is about and our nominating judging committee. So Gary Bush, president and now past president of CCFFA, is on the committee. Mike Haskin from Oregon Department of Forestry, now retired, but he's agreed to continue to help us. We were also training some of his uh, followers in Department of Forestry, but those stewardship foresters are awfully busy with the post-fire situation. So really glad Mike could be there again, and especially because he's been out to the Bugni's forest in the past, so it was nice to have him along. Myself as the extension agent. And this year we had Amanda Brenner. Happy to have you out there with us, Amanda, joining the team and helping with photos and video as we toured our nominee for this year. So there is Amanda. As you'll see, it was a bit of a rainy day, and she was out there with a GoPro video camera and other cameras as well. And to review what this event began in 1955, um, and it's been going on ever since then as the oldest recognition event for woodland farmers, tree farmers in Oregon in the state. And the main purpose is to bring attention and recognition to the excellent tree farming and forest stewardship work that's being done in Clackamas County. And the judges, once the nominees are in and we have the candidates and they let us onto their forests, we visit those farms and we look for their forestry practices and their plans, uh, look at the goals that they have for sustainable management and what kind of activities they've been doing, and particularly community service and education activities that encourage others to practice good stewardship. And I think you'll see tonight we have a great example of that with the Bugni Forest and Tree Farm. And I think many of you may recall that David Bugni and Mary Ann were candidates last in 2015, 5 years ago. And so this presentation, I get to kind of pick up where we left off. But some things that haven't changed in 5 years is just the basic story that they established their home and their forest in 1991 out there on Cedar Creek, a tributary of Eagle Creek, and in the backwoods there behind Estacada. And then they continued to grow their forest. They added 6.5 plus acres adjacent to their home forest. Um, and then they added another 39 acres upstream from that, and finally another 20 acres. And so now the total is about 83 acres. And if you want to see just about how it's situated, if you're out up past Eagle Fern Park and going up the Clawson Road and the George area, as it's called, and this little creek, Cedar Creek, that um, is that I can tell they've fallen in love with and is going through their forest. You can see the parcels kind of laid out here on a map. And I have these photos actually that came out of their tree farm plan. But now I'm going to try to share actually a video. Okay, I think it'll work now. Here we go. This is actually going to be a bit of a, a drone tour, and David's going to help me a little bit. So can you all now see this?
Yep.
The
Yep.
snowy woods?
No
All
words.
all right, and it's actually, let's go back to the beginning. All right, so what are we looking at, David?
This is a view of our parcels by our home. So the drone is basically situated right over the top of our house, and we're looking south. And so our parcels are pretty much heavily forested. So what you're looking at here is up on the top, that bench there, that's a neighbor. Now we're looking to the east. And you can see in the depression area, that's the Cedar Creek Canyon. And then basically our property goes to where almost as far as the large trees in the foreground. And as the drone pirouettes to more to the north, this is, you can see basically Where you see the cleared pastures and whatnot, that's the neighbor's property. Our property basically ends to where the trees end. Similar here, we're looking to the northwest, northwest, and the trees, pretty much what you see here, all these trees, these are ours. The clearing areas are the neighbors. And again, this is looking directly west. You can see the downstream end of the Cedar Creek Canyon there, incised in the drainage. And then the large trees in the far distant background, that's BLM property. And where you see the transition from the tall trees to the smaller trees in the foreground, that's about where our property ends, and the Clackamas Soil Water Conservation District property, which they purchased from Weyerhaeuser, recently begins. Now we're back about where we started. Yeah.
And that was the home parcel, the first two parcels. How many acres is that around there?
A total of about 23.
Okay, and now we're in the other two parcels that are up the stream from there.
Correct. So this is there's two parcels. There's a 20-acre parcel and a 40-acre parcel. And the 20-acre parcel has got the more mature stand of forest here, and that's what you're seeing. So we're looking almost directly east. So again, we're kind of an island of forest around the area. And so the cleared area to the right, that's a neighbor. And again, you can see the Cedar Creek Canyon incised in the drainage there. This is more of a less steep canyon-like nature than what we have at our house. So we have more opportunity for floodplain and that sort of thing here. And then if you look at the far left, you'll see another field. That's a Christmas tree farm of a neighbor's. And so you can see now as the drone proceeds to the east, and now it's proceeding to the north. Again, you can see this is in the 40-acre stand. You can see it's a younger, about 30-year-old trees. And then in the background, that's our 20-acre stand, which has about 60-year-old trees. And then where the trees in the distant background, where they go from the tall trees, and you see younger stand behind that, that's the property line. That's the western property line. This here, I thought this was interesting to include because you're going to see more of this, and I just attached it to this footage. What we did from 2014 till now is we installed a large number of large wood jams on our property, and I took our drone, and so it's at an altitude of about 25 feet. So it gives you an interesting perspective of the large wood in Cedar Creek. And you can see the different large wood structures we had placed. We had that large one there, just for frame of reference. That first one you saw is about a 36-inch DBH tree. And then here we had a tree that naturally fell with its root wads. We just had that dragged closer to the creek. And then you'll see a next large wood structure just upstream of it. And then if you look in the distant background, you'll see two more large wood structures. You can see a lot of those gravels that you see there are ones that we put in as well. This area was scoured down to bedrock. So you can see the dramatic difference from where you just saw bedrock basalt to now you're seeing a lot of gravels, cobbles, some boulders, sediments. It's starting to look more like a complex creek like it should have. Here the drone rotates to the north, and I just thought I'd include this because you're wondering why there's some logs that seemingly are out in the middle of nowhere there. We created a side channel for the creek to run through in higher flows. So those logs are actually in the side channel, and you could see the side channel there at the end flowing back into the creek. So that's a good place for refuge for the young steelhead and salmon when the waters are high. This is a good place for them to take refuge.
All right, so hopefully everybody saw that. So instead of showing a bunch of photos, I begged David for a little drone, and of course he had it because he's got all kinds of good technology, and so that was a nice way to have a virtual tour. So appreciate that, David. Everybody see the slides again?
Yep.
All right, so instead of this static photo, we had the tour. And now I have another, I thought I'd do another video here. So Amanda put together a video of our tour when we went out about a week ago. And I'm just going to start that one. A virtual
We're
tour.
good.
So Amanda, thank you. That was just kind of like being there, wasn't it?
It was, without getting wet.
Yeah, you could tell it was a rainy day, but that we were all eagerly anticipating the creek rising and the coho salmon showing up. So, did anybody notice the salmon trying to jump up the falls there? So we'll look. There were two little salmon that tried to jump. I should have queued you up for that. A little jack salmon, and
Yeah, I was going to ask if it was steelhead. I wasn't sure what it was.
yeah, they were.
Jacks.
David, you think those are jacks?
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, they didn't look like steelhead. But you'll see the next day they showed up a little bit in force, but it rained a little bit more. So, all right, well, I'm going to go back to the presentation then. So, Amanda, thank you for putting that together. We're still trying to deliver uh, virtual tours, similar to what Oswald did with some of the two different uh, neighbor to neighbor tours. So we're learning as we go here. Okay. So I'm going to kind of get a little bit on the technical side of things. There's an excellent forest plan, a tree farm plan that we saw 2015, 5 years ago, that David and Mary Ann wrote in 2013, and kind of looking to the long run. Of course, since then he's added a little update here and there, but I just wanted to point out what an amazing plan this is. You gave me a copy of it. You can see that it's got a lot of indexing and it has all the proper sections, and they're just keep filling up and adding to it as they go. And so he let me borrow a copy of it. Uh, so that's obviously an important part of forest stewardship, is having a good plan, and especially uh, keeping it up to date. And here's some examples, the different parcels. This is the parcel near the house, and he's typed out the management units, and you'll notice in all of these there's the feature of Cedar Creek through the middle with the red line. This is more of a mature forest type around the house in that canyon. That video Amanda showed, we were going down into that canyon, and the bridge and the steeper drop of the falls where the fish were jumping, trying to get up the falls, which they do eventually, especially with more water. Another part adjacent to the house that has some different forest types there, with the creek again going through it. And then the upstream parcel that you saw uh, typed out into the different types of stands in the younger forests, and then the 20 acres with some of the older forests. So I'm not going to dive too deep into the plan, but just suffice it to say that it's a very detailed plan, and there certainly it's the work on the ground that they're doing, to implement that. More examples of what's in the plan, describing the different types within each of those parcels. So David, how much time do you think you had to spend putting this thing together?
Oh, it took me months, since although I was a former forestry major for a while, it's been a long time. So it was fun to relearn a lot of things.
And you had some help. You had a forester that you worked with in the past, and then just recently certified the forest as a American tree farm as well. Is that right?
Correct.
And who helped you? Who are the foresters that you worked with?
Oh, geez. It's just, I figured you were going to ask me that. His name escapes me for the minute, but he did a good job. I'll think of it.
Oh, is that Don Loftus?
Yeah, sorry, Don Loftus. Yep.
Okay,
He
yeah,
was the only one that helped me. Plus,
yeah,
plus, just doing a lot of reading on things and whatnot.
yeah. And then for the certification, who was there to when you did that? Was that Mike Haskin or
That was
Mike
Mike
Thompson?
Thompson. Mhm.
Okay, for the Department of Forestry. So looking at the plan and just in general, across all your different parcels, a lot of different types of forests, but your overall goals, maintaining the forest health and the mature forest character is one of the overarching goals in those areas of mature forests, and particularly that parcel with the steeper canyon there by the house. And I guess when you first bought the parcel, I would imagine a place to live was top of your list. Is that right?
That's correct. We actually found the as an ad in the Oregonian. So so we thought, well, that looks like an interesting place. So we came out. And we said, yeah, we could make this work.
Wow. Where did you move from?
The Milwaukee Oak Grove area, in Milwaukee area, Portland.
All right, and then of course maintaining the environmental benefits of trees, which all woodland owners are doing for their own benefit as well as society. Generating income from harvesting is part of this. There's some working parts of the parcel that generate more income over time. Improving the riparian area, of course, you'll see that's a thread that runs through the property, the stream itself, as well as all the work they are doing, and enhancing fish and wildlife habitat as a major aspect of the work. And invasive species removal is especially along the stream, and protecting against wildfire, and then a legacy in mind, passing it on to your uh, your children. Speaking of your children, did anyone show up yet from the next generation?
Yes, our daughter Andrea is attending tonight. You can see her on your screen as a little blacked out box that says Andrea.
All right, welcome, Andrea. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for recognizing my parents.
You're welcome. Well, I think you had something to do with this too over the years, because now we're looking at, where some of the work is done. So this, why don't you tell us, this is that younger parcel as we were walking down the road from the house, and what's going on in here, David?
Yeah, what we've done is we just named our parcels for our kids. So this one is, we call it Andrea's Wood. So I'm fitting that she's here. And this is a 23-year-old stand that we've done pruning on to prune the lower limbs, to minimize the risk of ladder fuels and whatnot. And so that's probably the major thing that we've done here. I've also done my own pre-commercial thinning. So we did some pre-commercial thinning in here to reduce the stand density to something more appropriate.
And this was actually one from 5 years ago, because I saw the marks on the trees. And what's happening in this patch of woods?
So this is our 40-acre woods. We call this one, not named after our children, but we call this our Beaver Dam parcel, because when we first bought the place, it had 7 beaver dams on it. And with the photo that you saw earlier tonight is the current beaver dam. So they seem to come in a periodic cycle. They're like locusts. They come and they eat themselves out of house and home. And we love beavers. I'm all for them and everything. But it is funny to watch them how they live. And so what happens is that they establish themselves and they eat along the riparian area, and then they have kits, and then those kits grow up to have colonies. And so consequently, we had quite a few dams on the place. And then after they eat themselves out of house and home, they leave for a while. But since they eat mostly deciduous shrubs and trees, most of those naturally regrow. And so when they grow up to a certain size, they're back. And so they just happen to be back again. And they're started, the first dam is started up, and they provide great benefits for the coho, which most of us know. So they are very, very important keystone species in our area. But anyway, this is our Beaver Dam property, which is a 40-acre piece. And so what I did prior to my pre-commercial thinning is I just took some orange tree marking paint and just marked the ones that I wanted to thin out. Or what I do is I don't exclusively just thin via cutting. I also girdle some trees, not many, but I do some for wildlife habitat reasons.
And then these
Yeah.
trees, you'll also notice have the branches removed up to about 20 feet. And that's something that all members of our family have engaged in over the years, including our children, Andrea and Vince, when they were teenagers, as well as Dave and myself. It's just an ongoing project to keep working away at parts of each parcel. Eventually we'll be done with that, but
You won't be able to reach any higher.
No.
well, that is true.
But you could always buy one of those machines that you just, climb the tree even higher.
Right.
It's not as good of a workout though,
Yeah.
for the upper body.
So I have this one from last time because it was such a clear shot of that. So tell us what's happening here, David.
So this was on the 20-acre parcel we had bought back in 2012. And so it needed some thinning. So we retained Wayne Stone Logging to come in, and I marked the trees that I wanted him to remove. And because of the canyon-like nature and access and whatnot, we elected to use a skyline yarding system. So these are the skyline corridors. This is one of 3 that radiated from essentially a common point. And so this was one of those corridors you can see. And if you look in the distant background, you can see the tail spar there that they use.
Right. So then tree planting, throughout all of this, you think there's a lot of trees there already, but I understand you've been busy planting trees from the get-go, it sounds like.
Yeah,
How many do
we
you think
planted,
you've planted over the years?
probably 6 to 8,000 easily. I mean, in 2012, we planted almost 4,500, and then every year we plant some, and we plant them where where we had that substantial thinning, where we planted areas, and we had a small little clear cut in there that we replanted on a standard 400 trees per acre. And in this area here, what I did was we also try to replant in our riparian area, and even though it's shady, we have good success with the shade tolerant trees like western red cedar and western hemlock. So you can see I'm planting western red cedar here.
And I take it you're not the only one who plants trees in the family.
No, we all did it. I probably do the most, but Mary Ann's done quite a few, and Andrea and Vince have also done their share.
We also protect a lot of our trees with tubes, a little a Vexar tube and a stake, so that they're protected from the deer from eating the tips. And then you'll see here, there are blue tubes that protect from the mountain beavers that would like to be able to climb up that tree and just denude all of the branches and the tip as well. So
We have, right, exactly. We have pretty heavy boomer or mountain beaver infestations in spots. And so we find that just by seeing the signs of them where they have done some clipping of the seedlings or saplings. And so, just through years of experimenting, I figured they serve an ecological purpose. So, and it's futile to try to trap them and kill them. So I thought, well, why don't I try to live with them? So I tried various schemes, and what I seem to work 100% of the time now is by buying 2-foot tall, 4-inch diameter blue clear plastic tubes, and they haven't figured out how to overcome these. And so they protect the seedling, and these, since they can climb trees, at least at our place, they had climbed trees that were 12 to 15 feet tall. So these will remain on the tree till they're about that size, and then we'll remove them.
Yeah, I think you were pointing out to me that the mountain beaver started to clip where you're pointing there, and then you put the tube on and you saw, aha, I better stop this.
Yeah,
mhm.
and
It
you can see
works.
how this western red cedar in particular, it found a new limb to become its dominant top, and so it'll be fine. And so that, yeah, we use the signs that we're walking on the property all the time, so we're observant of when we see this condition occurring, and then we just put the tubes around, and that solves the problem.
Yeah. Well, then if you look out, I looked across the creek and there was this whole hillside of brush and I see all the blue tubes. And so Mary Ann or Andrea, did you have to crawl up that hill and put tubes on those trees?
Oh, yes, we have definitely done that.
Yeah. And I know how hard it is, especially near the riparian areas. There's even more mountain beaver, and they seem to have even more depredations near the creek.
Yeah,
And
you'll
then,
see.
this is an example of one that made it here. Were you gonna say something about this, David?
I was just going to say that you brought up a good point, that not only are the boomers or mountain beavers, browse on these things, but the beavers themselves will also take, you typically associate them with just eating deciduous trees, but they'll also take western red cedar. And so when we see that happening, we actually, and I don't know if you included the photo or not, but we'll actually ring those with range wire, and 3-foot tall range wire, and that has effectively kept the beavers from taking those. But we obviously, that's pretty expensive treatment, so we only do it in select areas where we at least want to try to save some trees, and the most likely they won't get drowned by the future beaver reservoir that they create.
Yeah. And that, if you look closely, you realize that a lot of the cedars that are out there are a legacy of your planting over these many years. And so, particularly in these areas like this, where the red alder is, starting to age out and fall apart, and the brush just keeps getting thicker, and a little intervention such as you're doing to make sure there's cedar for the next generation is extremely important.
Yeah, otherwise, what happens a lot of times, is that you just get these large areas of salmonberry, and while we want to keep the salmonberry, we'll just try to, I usually use a machete. I'll just whack out an area that's large enough to allow sunlight and reduce the competition, and plop these cedars or western red hemlock, western hemlock in there, and that usually will work.
Yeah, but you have to keep at it, don't you?
You do. You have to. Yeah, it's not something you can set it and forget it. You got to keep monitoring it.
And then when we were there several years ago, you were talking about your vision and things that you were doing along the stream in particular. And you showed us this area that you had just gotten started on all the invasive reed canary grass. And did you have some Japanese knotweed up there as well?
No, no, fortunately, no Japanese knotweed.
Oh,
Mainly
good.
the main invasive plants we have are, by far, it was reed canary grass. That's pretty well under control. But then, of course, everybody has evergreen and Himalayan blackberry. And then we do have some scattered holly, and that's basically it.
But that nice kind of level part upstream there that had all this reed canary grass, you were starting to work on it 5 years ago. And then this time when we visited this same area, that after many years of battling, if you look up and down the stream here, it's all filled with a lot of different trees. There are a lot of deciduous trees, and you can see some of the cedars up and down the creek. And this is the area that used to be dominated by the reed canary grass.
That's an excellent, and you juxtapose those really well because that first photo is the same area. So, this photo that you took shows what you can do. And, I can't take credit for most of this, that we were fortunate to be enrolled in the Clackamas River Basin Council Shade Our Stream program, which is a program funded by PGE. So they planted over 6,000 trees on our property over about 1,400 lineal feet of creek. And, did all this on their nickel, and it's come back beautifully. They planted, I gave them a list of about 50 native species of herbs and shrubs and trees that grow on our place, and said, here, pick from these what you can get from the local nurseries, and they did, and it looks just like it's supposed to now.
Yeah, and actually you can't quite see it, but this is where the river beaver are getting started again. And I see there's a metal post where you're probably putting some wire around some trees in there too.
Right.
And then continuing with your passion about stream enhancement, as you mentioned earlier, when a stream is scoured down to bedrock, the gravel's all gone, and it's not until you put some wood in and you're even adding the rock. You're not going to wait for it to roll down the stream from up on the mountain.
That's a good point. And that's certainly one way to do it. And but the way I saw it is that originally in the past, most of these the wood that was in the creek was removed, and so what happened when you reduce that energy dissipating mechanism, you've got all this hydraulic force coming down, so it scoured removed a lot of the stream bed material. So what we did here is we put in about 100 tons of spawning gravels. You can see here that my Mary Ann on the left and our son Vince on the right manning that little portable skid steer, and so he's dumping the gravels in this area. And this was the area that we saw earlier on when the drone was flying over that one little spot.
A little bigger rock to add, a little bigger machine, it looks like.
Yeah, this was a larger skid steer that we had rented. I'd never run any heavy equipment before, so this was really fun to learn how to use this device. And so we were able to get about 200 boulders, and but this size, these were large enough for Cedar Creek to not move. So we formed boulder constellations. And a friend of mine who's attending this tonight, Eric Jenkins, drove this skid steer quite a bit to help put in the boulders as well. And this is a good example. In this case, you can see the boulders here. Prior to this, there was nothing. This was actually on our Andrews Woods property. This was a former gravel quarry for the George area. So this is where they created a quarry to provide the base rock for the roads, from about the 1930s to through the 1960s approximately. And so this area was completely denuded. It was, turned into a quarry. They took all the rock out of the creek and crushed it up. So there was nothing here. Again, it was scoured down to bedrock. And so what we did was we got all these boulders. These are large. These are larger than the ones you saw before. These are about 3 feet across. And we put those into boulder constellations. I had a contractor do that with a large track hoe. And just in this case, we didn't add any spawning gravels in this area. They all came naturally. And it's amazing how quickly the stream responded with increased bed load, as far as gravels and whatnot. We've seen salmon and steelhead spawning in this area since then.
And this is going back to our first visit in 2015. You had just finished this project, I guess taking advantage of some of the access after you did the thinning and the wood that you had, and just had put all these in there.
Yes, this was, you can see where the contractor is with the large track hole. He's actually in that skyline, one of those 3 skyline corridors I was mentioning earlier. He took advantage of that for access and egress into that area. So you can see what we did was we donated all the large trees, the rootwads from our forest lands. And then we also got a load of logs from Longview Fiber, and then several loads of logs from PGE. So all told, we have close to, on the whole creek, over 2 miles, we've got about, not on our property only, but on other neighbors' properties, we put in over 200 logs.
Yeah, and that was just the beginning. So there they are kind of in the dry period. And then this nice picture of higher flows as it starts to work it and rearrange things. And
I'm in a meeting.
then, another aspect is you're bringing in some of the extra fish. That one didn't swim there on its own, did it?
No,
Oh, no.
no, that's from courtesy of the Eagle Creek National Fish Hatchery. Every year for about the past 4 or 5 years, we've gotten about 20 to 30 carcasses. Not many, just enough. Yeah, there's an example of what there they are. So that's what we're going to be doing tomorrow morning. Actually, is going over there to pick up our allotment, and so we put those in and people wonder why we do this, because what the salmon are providing are marine derived nutrients into our forests that countless animal and floral species use, from aquatic insects to bears to raccoons to trees and plants. They all take advantage of these nutrients that they're getting. So it's a very worthwhile way to help enhance the ecosystem. I'll stop doing this once the salmon population establishes itself a little bit more to where it should be. But until that point, we just augment with a few of these salmon carcasses.
And then another aspect, this so far was all what you've done on your own property, and then you became a real leader in the community. And of course, you saw this culvert, double culvert there on the main Clausen Road coming in, and it was blocking fish passage. So all that work you've done upstream, would be hard for the fish to get there. And when did you identify this as a need to replace this?
Basically, when we moved here.
1991.
Yeah, and I mean, they're just for scale, those are 2 6-foot diameter side-by-side steel culverts, and they were an impediment, a complete barrier to juvenile fish passage, and a substantial barrier to adult fish passage. We had neighbors who lived upstream of this that had never seen salmon in the creek for 50 years, and so we decided to try to write a grant to see if we could get some money to replace those 2 culverts.
And you finally did.
Yeah. Yep. So part of my community service aspect of this culvert was to design the bridge here. This is a pre-stressed concrete bridge, and it's about a 27-foot clear span. So it replaced those 2 culverts, and now the fish, it opened up about 5.2 miles of stream of Cedar Creek to anadromous fish. So salmon, the coho salmon and winter steelhead that we do have in the creek now can swim unimpeded till the point where they can't swim anymore.
And then from there, even bigger schemes for enhancing the creek. So this shows, the bigger map of the watershed, and that yellow area is beyond your own property, of course. You want to tell us what that yellow area is about?
Sure, just for a frame of reference. So if you look in the center, you'll see Eagle Fern Park. So those familiar with Clackamas County know where that is. And so you see that yellow line curve boundary there. Actually, our property is within the lower right-hand corner of that yellow line. And so what that yellow line denotes was the project that we wrote a grant for this year that actually was completed in June. And so that's about 3/4 of a mile in length of Cedar Creek. And so what was done there was we placed via helicopter 95 large logs into about 22 engineered log jams. And so you can see Cedar Creek there and its relation to the North Fork Eagle Creek that it flows into, which then flows into Eagle Creek, which you see there, which then flows into the Clackamas River.
Okay. And of course, there are other wildlife that you're helping improve habitat for. So a little bit of a trail camera view there of some elk. And there was the beaver dams that were from the last generation before they left the area, and now you have the next generation coming in. So this beaver dam was about ready to get busted out because the beaver had left back in 2015, if I recall.
Correct.
And some wildlife footprints, bird boxes, and a lot of, I noticed around different trees, different kinds of bird boxes. Now, what lived in that one?
We originally built that for when the beavers were here the first time. There was quite a beaver pond that they had, and so there were wood ducks here. And so that was a wood duck box.
And then the natural version of a birdhouse in a tree is when you have a snag. And so you've also done some snag creation around the property.
Right. The one there at our home, we retained a neighbor who was a logger who climbed the dug fir that the roots had been damaged during the the house construction back in '91. And so we decided, well, let's retain the tree and we'll just top it so that you can't really see from the perspective, but it has a natural slight lean downhill. So we didn't really, we're concerned about it falling against the garage, but it's been there now for 25 years. And it's been interesting to watch the various species of birds and animals that have made use of that snag as it's gone through its various stages of decay. And then if you look on the right side, like I mentioned early on, every year I make about 4 or 5 wildlife snags by girdling Douglas fir trees and also other tree species to turn them into wildlife snags much farther away from the house though.
Oh, that's the next one. And then bigger picture still, this map shows kind of the downstream of you. You became a bit of a spark plug for a community forest effort here. If you want to tell us a little bit about that.
Right. So if you look at this map, this is interesting. If you look at the yellow properties there, that's BLM land. The lavender properties are Portland General Electric property. And then you see Clackamas County's Eagle Fern Park in the cyan or sky blue color. And then if you look at what's kind of the middle of this horseshoe is that odd shaped orange colored land that was originally owned by Weyerhaeuser, and they had it up for sale. And so it's about 320 or 319 acres. And what I wanted to try to do is turn this into an overall community forest so that it would be for the benefit of the Clackamas County and anybody else wanted to come out and recreate in the area. And so I hunted for folks that were interested in buying it, and the Soil and Water Conservation District of Clackamas County decided to purchase the property, and now it's going to be part of this overall 1,600 acre forest. But what's to me is really important about it is that we also applied and wrote a U.S. Forest Service Community Forest Grant. And for those that aren't familiar with that, this is a grant program that's administered by the Forest Service nationwide. And there were only 8 of them allotted every year across the country, and we were fortunate to receive one. And so what they did was they basically paid for almost half of the cost of this property. But the proviso, and I think it's a smart one, is that they want it to be a multifaceted forest, so that it's not strictly set aside for logging, it's not strictly set aside for preservation. It's going to be a working forest. So there's parts of it that will be allocated for riparian reserves, part of it's going to be allocated for pre-commercial and then commercial thinning, and some of it for potential clear cutting down the road. So it's going to be a mixture of all things. And so it's a way of teaching to the public how you can make use of a forest in many ways. And that's what really appealed to me. That's why I wanted to go after that community forest grant. And so we were fortunate to receive that.
And it is there now, and it's got a future ahead, and we could all join in and help out with maybe some of the things that need to be done there.
Great.
So just kind of summarizing a lot of this, the work that you do on your own land, and then of course your community service work, currently on the board of directors here at CCFFA, and a member since 2015, chairing this steering committee that's looking at the Clackamas conference that I'm working on with you, and that's going to be a really interesting showcase of the Clackamas watershed. Then, since 2015, you've had more education events on the property, teaching at tree school a couple of times from your experience with the stream crossing and the bridges. And you may have noticed some bridges in some of the photos, and you're not surprising for an engineer that you can build bridges, and had some interesting techniques to share. Classes for the Clackamas River Basin Council there on the healthy streams and forests in the field. And also just this last year for our Society of American Foresters, a really nice, sharing what you're doing out there with the Society of American Foresters at our annual meeting. And then also just these community projects, which we were just looking at, but almost 2,000 feet of stream that were being planted along your property, the various grants that you've written, replacing those culverts and working with the neighborhood to get everybody on board to put that bridge in and deal with the inconvenience of that, but also now the benefits. You mentioned a neighbor that said they saw salmon spawning that they haven't seen in 30 years upstream of that after that bridge went in. Restoration, of course, the large wood projects and the PGE grant. And this last one with the helicopter placing all those logs. And I actually need to break here and show the video for that. And so I'm going to have to stop sharing again and go find a video. And I'm just going to start at the beginning of this project. This is the placement of the large wood.
Dave Bugni, and I'm the volunteer project manager for the Cedar Creek Fish Habitat Restoration Project located near Estacada, Oregon. This fourth and final project phase, being conducted during the summer of 2020, completes a multi-phase project begun in 2014. I will briefly describe the activities taking place during this phase and a summary of past phases. Cedar Creek, a second-order stream, is a tributary of the North Fork of Eagle Creek, and it has historically been a producer of coho salmon and winter steelhead. About half of this project, it was within institutional and public land defined within this white border here, which is owned and administered by the Clackamas Soil and Water Conservation District, the Bureau of Land Management, Portland General Electric, and Clackamas County's Eagle Fern Park. For scale, this white line here is about 3/4 of a mile. This phase 4, again encompassed within this yellow line, entails placing 95 large Douglas fir logs and 22 log structures within the creek. 19 of these logs are larger than the rest and also have their root wads intact, which will help to enhance the stability of the large wood structures during high stream flows and provide additional cover for aquatic life. The project is inaccessible for conventional ground equipment. Log placements will be done using a Vertol helicopter, which has a payload capacity of about 15,000 pounds.
So I'm going to skip to the helicopter now.
A log with its attached root water being lowered into place. All work such as this is typically done during our seasonal low water flow period to minimize impacts to aquatic life and also make it safer for workers within the creek. Two teams were used to direct the helicopter pilot's placement of the logs. One team began downstream and worked up. The other began upstream and worked down. Other than myself and Dave Stewart of the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, team members were comprised of personnel from Biohabitats and Columbia Helicopters.
Why do all this? Why expend all the intellectual and physical effort? Salmon and steelhead are a keystone species in an ecosystem. The keystone is that trapezoidally shaped top stone in an arch. If you remove it, the arch will collapse. From dippers to black bears to the surrounding forest, they all depend upon these fish. When you have a watershed like this, virtually undeveloped and unpolluted, with an intact forest canopy to keep water temperatures cold, the only limiting factor that prevents fish from thriving is a lack of high-quality physical habitat. Give them a place to spawn and rear, and they'll take care of the rest. By focusing on these minimally disturbed watersheds provides the quickest chance to recovery of these fish.
and based upon my observations of previous restorations, result in the greatest benefit for the least cost. In summary, this is the final product. 22 log structures like this with an average spacing of about 250 feet along a stream length of about 1 mile. Each engineered log jam is a little different than the others in size and layout, designed for the space in which it's in, including some place to enhance scouring of the bank to recruit future spawning gravel. We already observed the creation of pools for fish to utilize. Given the large size and long length of these logs, the number that are pinned to live trees, as you see here on the bank, or wedged between large boulders and interlocked between themselves, such as again as you see here, combined with the modest flow of Cedar Creek, these havens for fish should last for many decades. Over time, trees that are currently growing in the adjacent area next to the creek will succumb to age, disease, landslides, or wind, and will naturally fall into the creek to replace what we have put here today. Thank you.
All right. And from that one, I'm going to go right to another one because it's a kind of a good point being made here.
You take a cold, clear, clean mountain stream, add some engineered large wood to create a nice large pool. Let the first substantial fall rains come, and voila, a place for coho salmon to come and spawn. This is our cast of coho characters. 2 male, 1 of natural, the other of hatchery origin, and 1 female of natural origin. They are each about 2 feet long. When the female turns on her side and beats the gravels, she's building her red or nest. This may take hours. While she's doing all the work, the 2 males are duking it out to see who will mate with her. Meanwhile, she continues to build her red. The pool and most of the gravels did not exist prior to the placement by helicopter of this large wood earlier this summer. 20 other structures, similar to this one, were also built downstream. Funding was provided by Portland General Electric. The quivering male is indicating his readiness to spawn, but she's not yet ready. All this activity is downstream of our falls, which tests the strength of those salmon that migrate farther upstream.
That was just the day after our visit with the tour. We just missed them. But of course, David and Mary Ann were there, so thank you for sharing that video. And all the other videos. David, you're a great storyteller and videographer, so appreciate that. And now I get one more time to go back to the show here and finish up. So you can see the fruition of all this work. The salmon are coming back, and they're going to get upstream a lot further than they used to after the replacement of the culverts with those bridges, that bridge. And of course, David's been and Mary Ann have been recognized for this in other ways. Got the Fish and Wildlife Steward Award from Department of Forestry and Fish and Wildlife Department, Tree Farm System Certification, and the 2016 Cole Gardner Stewardship Award by the Clackamas River Basin Council. And so looking forward, to the future, all the things that we've discussed here that you're going to keep doing, pre-commercial thinning and commercial thinning, continue planting in those understory environments, as well as some of the areas that you cleared and along the stream, some retention harvests out in the future, and definitely maintaining those larger conifers within 200 feet of the creek, above and beyond maybe what's needed for minimum standards. The riparian area obviously is an important area of focus for you. There's some red alder that's aging out, and you're looking at harvesting that, maintaining those trails. We actually walked on a new trail to get to the bridge just on our visit last time, and maintaining, the forest health and aesthetic features, fish and wildlife enhancements. And obviously you already made some progress on that landscape watershed context in that forest conservation area and the greater area of the Eagle Creek. And you're thinking about carbon as well. So obviously there's a lot going on there, and just want to say congratulations, and thanks so much for sharing everything with us. It was great to go back twice, be there 5 years ago and then this last time. So thank you, David and Mary Ann.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's an honor.
And you're not off the hook yet. So I thought, I'd give you a chance to talk to us a little bit more about, I've asked folks this at these meetings in the past, what are some of the major challenges that you experience and the successes that you're proud of, and a little bit about your vision, if we can all hang out a little longer and hear what you have to say about that.
Sure. I think just quickly, the challenges really have been few. Obviously the challenging working out solutions so that you can coexist with the wildlife that's there is probably our largest challenge. And I suppose that we have to think about more about the risk of posed by the hazard of forest fires. So we're trying to think about those things. But the successes, I think you captured it very well in this video. You're a great storyteller. I mean, it's trying to create a 360-degree forest. So you're trying to recognize the benefits that a forest provides over and above just one thing. It's a lot of things, and so that's what we try to do. And as far as the vision for the future, I think it's just continuing to recognize the value that forests provide for everything, and I'm going to continue to advocate for that, on behalf of Oswald and everything else, to try to make sure that people understand the importance of privately owned small woodland forest owners and the value that they provide to Oregon.
Wow, I appreciate that. Mary Ann, do you have anything to add? What challenges do you have trying to keep up with this engineer?
Well, I go along for a lot of the projects that he dreams up, and I do think that he does a lot of dreaming overnight while he's sleeping, and he wakes up with these bright ideas in the morning, and he tells me what he's been dreaming about last night. And so we have many projects that I would never have imagined myself or my children or our family doing, that Dave has seemingly unending ideas about how to continue to work on and improve our property. So it's fun. It's been a really fun and exciting life here that we've spent for almost the last 30 years. While we've started here, built our home, and then added to our family, and then added to our properties over the years, so that we now have the 83 acres. So it's been very enjoyable. It's been good, hard work. We stay in shape that way with all these projects, and we love it.
Yeah, well, you can see on the video us trying to keep up with David as he was walking down the trails and waving his arms and said, "What is to see around the next bend?" Well, for me, it was almost magical, having never been up to that part of the area before, and the first time and then this last time, and seeing all the changes and the additions, and then of course seeing the fruits of your labor both in the woods and in the stream. It's just amazing. So my pleasure, my privilege to share your story.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you and congratulations. And I'm gonna have to be back out there again sometime, I hope. And
come anytime. Anyone is welcome anytime.
Yep.
Very good.
Hey,
Well,
David and Mary Ann, I've seen a lot of stream restoration. I've actually participated in stream restoration, but I have to say, you guys get a AAA+. Really nice job.
Thank you. That means a lot. So thank you.
it really is an amazing thing to see a stream transformed. I was serving on the OEB board on the North Coast, and over a 10-year period saw what you're seeing in many a stream. And people don't realize that. Why are we going to all this trouble? What benefit does it have? And it's not until you see, when you open up Fish Passage and you change the stream and the logs and the gravel, and then it all comes back. Now, the part about planting those trees for the future, that's more the 100-year scale. So it's nice to get that instant gratification of seeing salmon come even just the year after you place logs, like what we just saw. So that's
Absolutely.
amazing.
Even just months later, right? From June till now.
Well, I guess we're at the hard part. Are there any other contributions for this evening before I have to close this out?
Or if anybody has any questions.
Yeah, sure.
Well, so this is Kent. So first of all, congratulations, David and Mary Ann. Well deserved.
Thank
Now I
you.
have a comment that goes into a question. So my comment would be, there's an educational aspect of this award that I guess I would say would have fit along in my thinking, just my thinking, would have been like the classes you've taught at free school, or maybe you'd host groups coming out. I think in the past, I remember hearing about groups of school kids being at your place. But is there actually an educational aspect to what you've done, not only in your property, but kind of more regionally and larger with the purchase of the Weyerhaeuser land by the Soil and Conservation District? Do you think your neighbors are learning things, like the ones who didn't see salmon for 50 years, right? Do you almost feel like there's a change with your neighbors on 1,600 acres, but we'll call it a little more regional landscape, that simply doing these things, that it impacts other people, included people into your vision and what's going on, that kind of the area has learned? I don't know if I'm asking that well.
Yeah, I understand, and that's a good question, Kent. Thanks for asking. I think probably the best answer would be that we've been very fortunate. I mean, a lot of this couldn't have happened without the cooperation of our neighbors. And I think once, most people, regardless of their political beliefs, if you present something to somebody that makes sense, and especially if it doesn't cost them anything, and if they recognize that, they're living out here in the rural areas for a reason too. I mean, most people, as those Oswald surveys show, most people come out and live in the forest land not to make money. They live out there because for the beauty of it. And so once they recognize what we're doing is to promote and enhance and prolong that longevity or that beauty, everybody's on board. I mean, we've had on that first project, we had ourselves, and then we had two other landowners between us, between our two groups of parcels, or two landowners who own property there. They signed on to have large wood put onto their place. And once I explained to them the benefits and all that, and they say, well, that makes sense, and they're seeing the fruits of their. I mean, we have a neighbor there that saw salmon red that he'd never seen, because it previously was all just scoured down to bedrock like our place. And then in this most recent work we did, I was able to get two other landowners plus the Soil and Water Conservation District to sign on to have that large 3/4 of a mile restored. And again, it's just a matter of talking to folks and just explaining to them the situation. And I think that's the big part of the education. And when they call you up and say, like Glenn was relating, that we have these other neighbors that live even farther upstream that have been there for 50 years and have never seen a salmon. And then here they were outside their deck. It was a year or two ago. And they called me up and said, there's a salmon outside our deck while we're eating breakfast spawning. I mean, this just blew them away. And so I think that when you have people like that, then the momentum starts to build, so that when you want to do another project, it's a lot easier, But I think finally to finish off the answer, I think it's important, and I wholeheartedly want to keep continuing either tree school, or I also teach a healthy streams and forest class for the Clackamas River Basin Council, hosting these things where people come on out and we have a 3 or 4 hour tour, not like Gilligan's Island. We actually do go there and do something and don't get stranded. And it's I think people come away from that with a good sense of what we're doing, and that they can do that to their place if they think about it and have the energy to do it.
Now, I have to concur with Kent that it's educational for me. I've seen the projects before, all up on the Grand Round River, and I said, what are those idiots throwing good logs in root wads in the water for, and but you've seen results within 6 months after you've done it. It was very educational for me. It's just your forest is different than mine. I've got a small creek, very small, but it was very educational. You can actually see the benefits, and it makes it worthwhile investing the time and the money to put a bunch of logs and rocks in the stream to enhance the environment for the fish.
Great. Yeah, that's well put.
Well, it's a stopgap effort. You know, in 100 years, maybe it'll all be taking care of itself. But
That's the plan.
nice to get some quick results, though. Anybody else want to
I
ask a
I would
question?
all I would also like to say I'm just very impressed. I concur with the others. It was outstanding what you've done, and well deserved your award for Tree Farmer of the Year. I'm very impressed. I just wanted to say that.
Thank you.
Thanks. Also like to, of course, thank our children, Andrea, who's on tonight, as well as our son, Vince, who was not able to attend. And we also have some good friends attending tonight, Eric and Victoria, and they have been here for many of our projects over the years, always willing and excited and happy to join us on one of our projects. They live in Southern Oregon, but they take vacation time to come up and help us
Move gravel.
move gravel and put logs into creeks and prune trees and just anything that we come up with, they come join us for. So we thank them and appreciate that they are here tonight. Thanks, guys.
Well, with that, it's great to see everybody, and I'll call it to a close. And
Okay. Well, I guess,
congratulations.
Great meeting, Glenn. Thanks.
All right, everyone. Thanks, Glenn.
You're welcome. Bye,
Thanks,
everybody.
everyone.
Bye.